And yes, you're right. Their fame grew through MySpace.
Yes. A page
Do
that
you
they
know?
didn't even set up or
No,
post to. It was another like fan.
and it truly put the shit up, the fear of God into record labels. They're thinking, well, hang on a minute, if they can do this, what purpose have we got?
Yes.
It really scared them to death.
Yeah.
For that, I shall always be eternally grateful. Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of That's Audiophiles. My name's John. His name is Andy. Brace yourself. War ein Punker und lebte in der großen Stadt. Es war ein Wein, war Vienna, wo alles tat. Hatte Schulden, denn trank, doch ihn liebten alle Frauen. Und jeder rief, come and rock me, Amadeus. More on that later, perhaps.
I love reggaeton.
Anywho, we've got a proper song to listen to. Andy, what have you got for us today?
Well, the day's finally come. You and I have talked about this band's first album at length several times. You know they're one of my favorites. But I also know that you really didn't pay them much,
Shack
if any.
Attack? No.
Bingo. No. I know that you didn't really pay much attention to anything after their first album, though I know you really, really love their first album. The band's the Arctic Monkeys. And what I want you to check out is, so that's like, we're talking 2006 was their first album. We're fast forwarding 16 and a half years to their last album. And this track featured on it was the second single, I believe. And it's a track called Body Paint. So I'd like for you to give that a listen. Give some of this newer Monkey stuff a go and let me know what you think of it.
Okay, will do.
For a master of deception and subterfuge, you've made yourself quite the bed to lie in. Do your time traveling through the tanning booth, so you don't let the sun catch you crying.
Interesting start. There's that keyboardy line at the beginning, which is quite odd sounding. And then piano comes in really nice, and you've got a very gentle, slow beat. It kind of sets the mood. And then your man, Mr. Turner, starts singing in an interesting falsetto. Not quite sure what he's doing here. I guess we'll find out. But the whole music and the setting puts me in mind of like this is madness. I apologize, Eddie's going to hate this. It kind of puts me in mind of like an Al Green stuff, but his voice sounds, obviously it's not Al Green. It's like pasteurized Al Green. There is a certain tension to his falsetto. Yeah, which is interesting. I'm not 100% won over by it as yet. It's early days. It might, but no, this is obviously different and an interesting line to forge for the band. Let's see how it progresses.
So predictable, I know what you're thinking.
That's so funny, that.
My teeth are beating and my knees are weak. as if there's something up with the wiring. Composed.
Those strings are a lovely touch. And again, it's just reinforcing this 70s almost soul to me. And I could imagine Al Green singing over the top, Bell, or whatever. Yeah, it's really nice and beautifully done.
Your head behind the mountain peak don't have to mean that you've gone into hiding. So predictable, I know what you're thinking. I'm watching your every move. I feel the tears are coming on. It won't be long. It won't be long. Straight from the cover shoot, still a trace of body paint on your legs and on your arms and on your face.
That's really interesting. It's like a mishmash of a few things here. So you get the strings coming in rather than the lush strings. You now got this not pizzicato, but you know what I mean, sort of hit strings. Striking, that's the word. And it kind of reminds you in a way, it's a little bit Beatlesque, perhaps. But then he tries to put extra soul into his voice as well, and the two, it's really interesting. I'm not sure it's 100% successful for me. People would probably love this, but let's just go back and listen to that again. That's really interesting.
It won't be long. Straight from the cover shoot, still a trace of body paint on your legs and on your arms and on your face. And I'm keeping on my costume and calling it a writing tool. And if you're thinking of me, I'm probably thinking of you.
The Arctic Monkeys phrase.
Of body paint on your legs and on your arms and on your face. There's still a trace of body paint on your legs and on your arms and on your face. There's still a trace of body paint on your legs and on your arms and on your face. There's still a trace of body paint on your legs and on your arms and on your face. So predictable, I know what you're thinking.
that's that. Yeah, that was an interesting song. I wasn't convinced at the start. It sort of grew on me as it went through. Um, I think musically it's really nice. From that sort of soul-y bit, it gets a bit more stirring. Um, it kind of reminds me a little bit. It's almost if Arctic Monkeys were to do an ELO song without all the choral stuff. Yeah, and that guitar tone that came in, that was quite a George Harrison-like guitar tone as well, which is it's really nice. It really was. And I was thinking towards the end, actually, how would it have sounded in his old voice doing this? I thought it probably wouldn't fit. So I don't particularly like his voice in this, but it's probably a wise decision, and probably hearing it a few times, I would get more used to it. Um, yeah, it's so not 100% successful, but interesting song, and certainly better than some of their stuff that I've heard recently. Yeah, but yeah, there's a lot to like in it, and it's really well put together. Um, yeah, I have to find out a bit more about this. I presume this is off their latest album. I'm not sure, but let's go back to Andy and find out more.
All right, welcome back. Welcome back. So what do you make of this track, John?
Okay, so yeah, this is interesting. I mean, you gave me Cornerstone on Into the Music,
Yes, yes.
which I didn't mind at all, actually. I still don't think it's as good as our first album, but it
And-
was a decent song.
Just a quick disclaimer, that was on Into the Music, I think. So if people go looking
Yes.
for that on this channel, they're not going to find it. We did it on Into the Music. But yes, that was off Humbug, their third album. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
bit of housekeeping.
And then Greg, I don't know if it was who, I think it was on his own. He reacted to a song on Into the Music, which was 4 out of 5, I believe the song was,
Mhm.
which I did not like at all. So I had high hopes coming into this. So anyway, the song starts. Open mind, John, open mind. So we get this keyboard opening, which is the sort of synthy keyboard, which is slightly, I don't want to say wonky, but there's something not, there's something about the sound of it, which instantly put me in mind of like a 70s soul ballad straight away. I mean, within 5 seconds, tops. So there's this really gentle beats, there's a nudging bass, and a lovely sounding piano when Mr. Turner begins to croon. So interesting choice, the falsetto. And it gave me flashes of something like Al Green would have done circa his Bell period, But there's a certain tension in Turner's falsetto. It's not just a straight I'm singing high sort of thing. So it does give a little je ne sais quoi to the delivery, but I'm not 100% sold at this point. So there's the line, so predictable, I know what you're thinking. This line's repeated throughout the track. I believe it's kind of like a chorusy bit. And then we go into a second verse. And here we suddenly get these luscious strings enter, and they're broad and sweeping. There's more 70s signposting here. Barry White would have been proud of those strings. And it's beautifully done. It really is. So he's crooning away again. And after the predictable line, I'll call it, that line with the word predictable in it, sorry.
That's another way of describing it.
They shift from sweeping to striking, sort of short bowed notes.
Yes.
And this is a little, I mean, it's lazy to say this, but it's a little Beatle-esque in its sort of delivery. It reminds you of that. There's loads of other stuff I've done it, but
yeah,
that's one of my
but you're
major
not
frames
wrong.
of reference. Yeah. And then we get back vocals harmonizing on the word long, as he sings there. And they have like a very mini sort of, again, it's like a Ringo drum entry. Um,
Yeah.
and it's just only you pointed out in another song recently. There's like just these little tiny snippets, and it could only be 2 seconds. But you think, oh, yeah, that reminds me of Ringo, and it just does, you know. And he's a much maligned drummer, but really he has a certain sound, and it is a very, you know, you're drumming in one of the best band ever. You know, you got to be decent. Well, mocking aside, at this point, Turner tries to put some extra soul into his voice here, and for me, it's the least successful part of the vocals on the whole track. And he sings like straight from the cover shoot, still tracing of body, and he goes really high on body paint. I didn't particularly, I didn't buy that bit to me. You know, it didn't work for me. There you go. So there's more harmonies on the words face, and then there's also an extra interjection of the words keeping on as they go through this. And then we pick out, I didn't pick out loads of the lyrics actually, because I was really listening to the music. We got a classic turn of phrase, if I might say so. If you're thinking of me, then I'm probably thinking of you, which, you know, would have fitted on the first album very easily as a lyric. You know, it's just classic. The song changes here, and we get these heavy guitar chords and the return of the lush strings and the slightly wonky keyboard sounds. It's interesting because we get the full works as he repeats the phrase. I think it's still a trace a few times. And the band is almost shadowing what the previous strings were doing with these short, but they're doing it not quite to exactly the same tempo, but they did the same effect. And now it's the strings who were doing that are now doing the elongate, and they're connected everything with their extended wingspan, as it were, which wraps everything together. It's really nice. Enter a lead guitar. Sorry to say this, but with a George Harrison tone, so the more Beatles. I mean, it really is, and it's sort of all things must pass, sort of George Harrison, and he's almost quacking as it goes through, as Turner repeats the predictable phrase, sorry, and then he vocalizes until the song fades out. At the end, I was totally convinced by the musical content. And actually, if I was going to sum it up with my referencing, I would say it's a bit of 70s soul, perhaps sort of the Al Greeny type stuff, but slightly, I don't mean this in a rude way, but slightly pasteurized or semi-skimmed. It had a little bit of the fat taken off of it, which, you know, you can't expect all people to do all things, so that's fine. But at that, with a bit of ELO as well,
Yeah.
particularly the second half, but done very much in an Arctic Monkeys style. So it wasn't a pastiche of any of those things. It was their own sound, but with these influences in, which I thought was really interesting. Musically, I'd say for the first 30 seconds, I was prepared to quite hate this track, and I didn't. I really liked it at the end. And it got me to thinking as well, how would this have sounded if he'd have sung this in his old voice? You know, it's clearly his voice. No matter if it's then or now, it's still his voice. You know?
Right. I know, but I
his
know
old
exactly
voice.
what you're saying.
Yeah. It just sounds silly when I say it out with the words coming out of my mouth. But yeah, in his old voices or how it sounded, and I think it probably wouldn't work at all.
No.
So perhaps it is the correct choice. And as I think I said in action, you know, nothing stays the same forever. So you've got to change. And I certainly don't begrudge any band that changes their sound and develops and evolves, because that's what we should all do. And it will work for some, sometimes it doesn't work for others, etc. I think that his voice, I'm still not 100% bought on it, but it worked better for me, particularly in the second half of the song. And I think perhaps that's the fuller sound behind it. And also perhaps the tempo a little bit as well. It just seemed to, complement it a bit better. I have no doubt in my mind whatsoever there are plenty of people who would probably think this is the best Arctic Monkeys track ever, and I could see how it could impact on them. Didn't quite do that for me, though. As I said, I was fully prepared to hate the song, and I didn't. The only thing is, I'm not 100% on his voice, and maybe multiple listens, I will get there.
Yeah.
I'm not guaranteeing it, but it may, but there's a possibility. But yeah, I would say this is a really interesting track. It does show musical development in terms of his songwriting, and it's certainly better than other stuff that I've heard of their more recent output, like
Yeah.
that 4 out of 5, which I thought was not up to scratch, to be honest with you. But anyway, you know, I'm
Fair.
sure he was very happy with it, and that's all that matters, doesn't it? At the end of the day, he's not going to put an hour and think, "Fuck hell, what's John going to think?" We better get it right this time. You didn't like the last one.
Yeah. I don't think that's anything that.
Never
goes
mind
through
the
them.
other, like, 10 million fans out there.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. It's funny. I've always after their first couple albums, they would release stuff, and I'd be sort of like, I'd like it, but I'd be confounded with the idea that he would switch his vocal style, or sort of like the palette that was present on the previous album or first 2 albums, because they're kind of similar. But it's almost like, what if you looked at it, instead of looking at a first album like this is their sound, what if it was as if they, on their first album, they said, all right, we want to look through the lens of garage rock in our own way. We want to capture this time in rock and roll history where garage rock was a thing, and we want to make it our own. And what if every album after that, they sort of looked at a different 5 to 10 year span in music and said, all right, we want to take this sound and then do our own thing to it. And they do that with every one of their albums. And then you realize they're not changing. It's the same goddamn blueprint. They're just picking a different muse as their lens for each album. And when you look at it that way, they are consistent. They're not changing. They're just doing the same blueprint, but through a different lens in this different time in music, and picking a new subgenre or genre to be their, like I said, their muse for that album. And that's what I think that they do. Like, that is, and you can like it or not like it, or like some albums when they do it and some albums when they don't. But I think at this point, I've come to realize that that's kind of their goal, or it would appear to be their goal to me anyway. So this is sort of that tapping into 70s kind of rock and subgenres of rock with a little bit of soul and stuff tapped into it as well. And I love this album. And so let's get into the band, discuss this a little bit further. Arctic Monkeys comes as a surprise to absolutely no one. They are an English rock band, John. They were formed in Sheffield in 2002. The group consists of lead singer Alex Turner, drummer Matt Helders, who I adore, guitarist Jamie Cook, and bassist Nick O'Malley. They were heralded as one of the first bands to come to public attention via the internet, with commentators suggesting they represented the possibility of a change in the way in which new bands are promoted and marketed. Many very famous and
can I just say, from my perspective, at the time, I bought this CD, as it was, the day it came out. And yes, you're right. Their fame grew through MySpace.
Yes, a page that they didn't even set up or post to. It was another fan. And
it truly put the shit up, the fear of God into record labels. They're thinking, well, hang on a minute, if they can do this, what purpose have we got?
Yes.
It really scared them to death.
Yeah.
For that, I shall always be eternally grateful.
Yeah, and a lot of bands sort of took their cue from that, would then go on to self-produce, self-release and stuff like that. We've talked about that before on the channel. So yeah, in their way, whether they intended to or not, they really trailblazed this kind of, maybe it's just a perfect storm of time and technology and all that stuff. But it is a very cool musical, historical anecdote. But yeah, many very famous and venerable musicians have praised the band, including Led Zeppelin guitarist Jimmy Page, Foo Fighters frontman Dave Grohl, Metallica drummer Lars Ulrich, and the rapper and Wu-Tang founding member RZA. Bob Dylan claims to have made special efforts to see the band live, while David Bowie said they were a nice, solid Brit band. And Damon Albarn, who I know you're also a huge fan of, called them the last great guitar band, adding, I don't really know if there's anything as good as that since. And the band has released...
Clearly hasn't listened to the Ting Tings.
There you go, John. Must have not landed on his lap. The band has released 7 studio albums, and they've grown a reputation for changing or evolving their sound from album to album. Thus, their sound and style have been described in myriad different ways throughout the years. Mainly, they've been described as indie rock, garage rock, post-punk revival, psychedelic rock, alternative rock, lounge pop, post-Brit pop, stoner rock, guitar pop, post-punk, punk rock, and hard rock. The band was an object of discussion for cultural theorist Mark Fisher in regard to the concept of hauntology, which was a new term for me, and I did a little digging. It's a music genre or a loosely defined stylistic feature that evokes cultural memory and aesthetics of the past. It developed in the 2000s, primarily among British electronic musicians, and typically draws on British cultural sources from the 1940s to the 1970s, including library music, film and TV soundtracks, psychedelia, and public information films, often through the use of sampling. Fisher describes it as the lost futures of modernity. In an interview with Crack Magazine, Fisher said, something like the Arctic Monkeys. There's no relation to historicity. There is a clear, they're clearly a retro group, but the category of retro doesn't make it sense anymore because it's retro compared to what? And Arctic Monkeys airbrush cultural time out and appeal to this endless return and timelessness of rock and roll. With there being a great distinction between the rock sound of the 5th album, AM, and the slower sound of the 6th album, Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino, their 7th, The Car, has been described as a comfortable middle ground. The album covers many genres, including art rock, orchestral rock, lounge rock, baroque pop, and funk, as well as elements of jazz. And in a 2002 interview with ABC, Turner states, every time I've sort of thought about attempting to go in a direction that we've gone before, it sort of feels quite quickly, it just sounds like a spoof or something. And I've always just been following the same instincts we were in the beginning. That really hasn't changed. The Car, forgive me, the album on which this track features, was released on October 21st, 2002. And Body Paint was the second single released leading up to the album's release. It debuted on September 29th, 2022, my birthday. Happy birthday to me. The album received critical acclaim upon its release. Critics complimented the band's artistic progression, the album's production, and Turner's lyrics, though some felt the band's continued deviation from their earlier indie rock sound would remain polarizing to longtime fans. It was nominated for the 2023 Ivor Novello Awards and the Grammy Award for Best Alternative Music Album. The album also shortlisted for the 2023 Mercury Prize. The single, There Better Be a Mirror Ball, was nominated for the Best Alternative Music Performance at the 65th Annual Grammy Awards, while the single Body Paint and the song Sculptures of Anything Goes have been nominated for Best Alternative Performance and the Best Rock Performance, respectively, at the 66th edition of the Grammy Awards. The album was promoted by the singles There Better Be a Mirror Ball, Body Paint, and I Ain't Quite Where I Think I Am, all of which peaked in the top 25 of the UK singles charts, as well as by a global tour and multiple television appearances. The album was compared to the works of David Bowie, Burt Bacharach, Scott Walker, Roxy Music, John Barry, Portishead, Jarvis Cocker, Jean-Claude Vanier, Isaac Hayes, Curtis Mayfield, Steely Dan, and Marvin Gaye, as well as James Bond soundtracks. On Metacritic, the album received an 82 based on 25 reviews indicating universal acclaim. Thomas Smith of NME thought the album best summarized the story of the band: sharp songwriting, relentless innovation, and unbreakable teamwork, adding that it would be rewarding to listen for old fans as well as a remarkable starting point for new ones. Mark Beaumont of The Independent described it as roaring off in every direction, as wonderfully imaginistic as it is largely impenetrable. And Kate Solomon of I called the album swooningly glamorous and musically theatrical, comparing it to the diverse works of David Bowie. Ewan Gleto of Cult following highlighted the influence of Elton John and Jimi Hendrix, as well as David Bowie on the Arctic Monkeys, calling the album a deeply moved and heavy set filter for the late 1960s and early 1970s of rock and pop music. I and NME awarded the album 5 out of 5 stars, while The Guardian, Independent, and Mojo awarded it 4 out of 5. NME and Time Out named it the best album of 2022. Riot Mag also listed the car as the year's second best album. Publications including Far Out, Mojo, and DIY, The Sunday Times, and Kitty Empire, and Kitty Empire of The Observer included the album in their top 5 of the year-end list. So let's jump into these lyrics. For a master of deception and subterfuge, you've made yourself quite the bed to lie in. Do your time traveling through the tanning booth so you don't let the sun catch you crying. So predictable, I know what you're thinking. My teeth are beating and my knees are weak. It's as if there's something up with the wiring. You can poke your head behind the mountain peak. Don't have to mean that you've gone into hiding. So predictable, I know what you're thinking. I'm watching your every move. I feel the tears are coming on. It won't be long. It won't be long. Straight from the cover shoot, still a trace of body paint on your legs and on your arms and on your face. And I'm keeping my costume, and I'm keeping on my costume, and I'm calling it a writing tool. And if you're thinking of me, I'm probably thinking of you. There's still a trace of body paint on your legs and on your arms and on your face. And this repeats several times, this refrain. So predictable, I know what you're thinking. Oh, ha. Yeah, yeah. So musically, the song has been described as a loungy piano ballad and Beatlesque, with a gorgeous string arrangement reminiscent of Burt Bacharach and George Martin's work with said group. Robin Murray of Clash thought that there was a sense of Bowie mid-70s peak in the arrangement, and that the song, split in two by the guitar solo, finds the band moving in a sensual yet utterly insular path. The second half of the song features gritty guitars and push the song into a slightly more rocking direction. As for the meaning of the lyrics, I found a great article that sums them up. There's this blurb that kind of illustrates the gist of the song. In the lyrics, he's illustrating an image of a stage or a film character stepping away from the lights, but staying in character, with layers of body paint, makeup, concealing their truth. Think of method actors and how they stay engrossed within their role, allowing them to channel through emotions they otherwise would prefer not to navigate outside of the role they're playing. It's a mask, and his talisman is the writing. So yeah, I think it's just this idea of having to go from doing all of this media stuff and just kind of keeping a facade about himself that's not really who he truly is. But it also has this dual meaning where it could easily be about infidelity and someone showing up with the body paint or the remnants of whatever they had done before. So there's kind of like this dual meaning behind it. A lot of people just often flock to, oh, it's a song about infidelity, but in a way he's kind of taking apart himself as well, which is another Turnerism. He does that a lot. He kind of paints himself out to be a bad guy in a lot of his songs, which I always find interesting. It's got to be a way of therapy for the guy or something.
Yeah, just a couple of things sprung to mind. One, that reviewer said it was mid-70s Bowie. He's talking out of his arse for a start. But that aside, the lyrics, obviously, you just read them to me. I didn't really catch them when he sung it as well. But what struck me about it was he's clearly writing in metaphors. Now, if you're choosing to use duality or different roles, you can do that in many ways. And even in terms of dressing, you can use a mask or whatever.
Yeah.
Body paint's much more specific. Now, I think dumbly, body paint can relate to a car, as in the title of the album.
Yeah.
The car body paint. But if you think of a person with body paint, you're thinking of a more sort of salacious job role.
Yeah.
I.e., when on stage. Now, not necessarily infidelity itself, but that sort of slightly demeaning or, putting a front on as an object rather than your talents, as it were,
Yeah,
shine
as a person, your humanity or whatever, right?
I think that's probably what he's getting at the most, rather than just this, infidelity thing with body paint. But yeah, I think it's interesting.
Yeah, it is. It is.
That's my grasp of it within two
No,
minutes.
I think you're pretty much spot on. It's just funny. It's another reason why I love his lyrics. Like his lyrics is that like you can interpret it one way instantly, but then when you dig a little bit deeper, you realize that the metaphor that he's using could easily apply to the face value story, but actually there's something deeper to that behind it all. And I've always loved the way he writes and delivers his lyrics. And I realize that can be polarizing for some, or not everything's going to hit, but yeah.
Just on that, you see, that's the thing. His delivery on the first couple of albums, is you know, especially, has a certain credibility to it. In his voice, because it's regionalized to a certain extent and it's natural, so there's no affectation to it, like we've talked about with other bands as well. Someone like David Gedge from Wedding Present as well, and I said in the 80s he was slightly mocked for his accent, and now it's beloved, you know. And I think that's why I think certain people, probably myself as well, don't like the change in his voice. You can change your musical styles, but changing your voice is seen as such a drastic thing. That's why certain fans won't like it. There's a much bigger deal than changing style. Now, you might change voice because you change style. You might have to change your voice.
Yes, but that's what I was getting at, because you underscored that in your synopsis.
Doesn't always follow what you like. Yeah. So you know, whether you like something or not, it's usually got nothing to do with logic. So
yeah, the gritty nature of his lyrics and the rhythm and the cadence that he delivered in the first couple albums was perfect for that kind of music. But that's not going to translate to this like the loungy, jazzy, orchestral type stuff that he's got going on here. That's got more soul in it, and you know, it would just be out of place. Like and you rightfully mentioned that as well. So yeah, it's.
I take it. Can I just ask? Does he sing in falsetto for the whole album?
No, not the whole album. No, no. But he does do that, not a lot, but he does it far more than he would in those first 3 albums, for sure. The falsetto and the backing falsettos that, you know, O'Malley and Helders provide really became a fixture in AM, when there was kind of like almost hip hop or rap kind of influence into it, as well as this like doo-wop stuff going on. And then it just took off, and it started finding itself more and more in their albums as it progressed from AM on. So yeah, excellent, man. Well, thank you so much for giving this a listen, John. You knew this was a long time coming, but I had to crack into this, and maybe I'll do some other stuff from anything beyond their second album intermittently in the future. But thank you again for giving this a listen, guys out there.
It's really interesting. Really interesting.
Yeah, it is. It is. Guys out there in the listening audience, let us know what you thought of this Arctic Monkeys track. If you've listened to this album, if you reminded you of any of the acts that were quoted in some of this material that I read earlier. I'd love to hear if you have any suggestions for other stuff we should check out. Please drop any of that in the comments field below. We love interacting with you guys. Really do appreciate you guys tuning in. If you're new here, please think about subscribing. And no matter if you've been coming here since day one or you are new, please hit that thumbs up. It helps us with the algorithm monster and makes our presence felt more on YouTube. Trying to grow the channel, we cannot do that without you. All that out of the way, hopefully, John and I will see all y'all in growing numbers on the next installment of the Audiophiles. See you later, guys.